In my previous videos, we dived into the absurd chaos of Vice City and revisited the gritty streets of New York in the Warriors. Now, I present to you a journey into a game which took me less than 4 days to complete, a game I've played so many times that I honestly can't even remember the number of times I've ended up beating it, a game that gave you the ability to fully express your teenage anger while avoiding getting locked up in a mental institution. Bully. Released in October of 2006 and developed by Rockstar Vancouver, Bully was initially released for the PlayStation 2, with releases for the Xbox 360, Wii, and PC coming in the following years. It was one of the most controversial Rockstar releases alongside Manhunt and Manhunt 2, and it was a game that overall didn't really sell that many copies compared to series like GTA or Red Dead, managing to only sell 1.5 million copies in the first few years after release. Despite the low sale numbers, the critics as well as the player-based reviews put this game in masterpiece territory. Before diving deeper into the game, covering the story and talking about the characters, I want to make it clear that this game is not for everyone. And it's a game that comes from a weird experimental phase of Rockstar's past where they attempted different things like the table tennis game or the Manhunt series. It's a game that might not have been your cup of tea, and a game that might seem weird to you, and rightfully so. The game is weird, the story is weird and even cringe at times, but beneath all of the weird and abstract stuff this game features, there's a layer of complexity that captures the school life of a large number of folks that grew up during the 90s and 2000s. It might have been perceived terribly by the media, causing an outrage and even tanking the sales, but when you take a deeper look behind the game's name, you will find that the game is made for you to learn that bullying is not the way. Well, at least bullying the weak kids is not the way. And it punishes you for being violent towards weaker opponents, especially girls and smaller kids. Not like you shouldn't already know that acting in that manner towards these specific groups is bad, but yeah. With that said, I think it's time we move on to the story. The story follows 15-year-old Jimmy Hopkins, who's dropped off at Bullworth Academy by his mother and new stepdad, his fifth. His mother is going on her honeymoon, and this sets up the entire premise of the game. Upon arrival, Jimmy is greeted by Miss Danvers, who tells him to meet the headmaster, Dr. Crabblesnitch, and after the introduction, Jimmy is sent to his dorm to change into a school uniform. There, he meets Pete Kowalski, and of course, this fucking guy, Gary fucking Smith. Okay, now, before continuing with the story, I just want to take a quick moment and say that I absolutely hate
Oh, I hate
this
you.
character. Okay. Back to the story. After meeting Pete and Gary, Jimmy's then basically manipulated into doing things for Gary while being totally oblivious to the fact that Gary's going to turn on him in about half an hour. With chapter 1 coming to a close, Jimmy's then lured by Gary into a trap where he has to fight Russell, aka King Kong from fucking AliExpress, and after beating Russell, Gary confesses that he's an absolute sociopath and that he's better than Jimmy. Oh wow, shocker. In chapter 2, the school gates finally open and the player can finally experience some open world gameplay. Chapter 2 mostly revolves around Jimmy trying to find a way to beat the preps and to prove that he's tougher than them, doing challenges where he ends up boxing them and winning their lighthouse, racing them, and finally, of course, boxing and beating their champion only to have to fight all the preps again before finally beating them. With chapter 2 completed, Jimmy now has the respect of both the bullies from chapter 1 and the preps he just ended up beating. In chapter 3, it actually starts snowing and Jimmy's forced to wear this dumb sweater that his mother sent him. Now, of course, I couldn't let my James walk around like this, so I quickly got rid of this piece of trash and went with something more appropriate for a 15-year-old. In this chapter, Jimmy is hell-bent on taking down the Greases, and after a lot of back and forth, both helping them and also sabotaging them, he finally finishes the job in the Rumble after taking down the leader, Johnny. In chapter 4, Jimmy is left to deal with both the nerds and the jocks, two opposite factions who absolutely love to be in each other's presence. Now, of course, he immediately picks on the nerds, who are kind of a bunch of assholes in this game, with Algernon, Ernest, Melvin carrying the torch of assholeness. So, I honestly understand why someone would stuff these pricks in trash cans and lockers. After dealing with Ernest and helping him sabotage the jocks in a series of missions, the chapter culminates in the big game, which is probably one of the best missions for me personally, as it's just an absolute shit show where Jimmy sabotages the jocks dressed as their own mascot, and some of the things he does here, man, I mean, just look at this. After beating the jocks, he finally becomes king of the school, which is honestly kind of a cringe thing to say, and it's just a weird story aspect that I remember made me feel great when I played this when I was like 12. But of course, this is short-lived as things go south extremely fast. Chapter 5 is basically just Jimmy losing all of his respect, getting kicked out of high school, then helping all of the factions in hope that they end up liking him again, only for things to escalate once again in a big fight, which of course Gary Smith instigated in hopes of becoming the true king of the school. After going around town, meeting Zoe, Omar and Edgar, and of course a few other townies, including this guy, Jimmy returns to Hogwarts in hopes of casting Avada Kedavra on Gary Smith. Okay, sorry, wrong story. Jimmy returns and is ready to exact his revenge on one of the boys who ended up outsmarting him, Gary Smith. After beating him in an extremely dangerous way on top of the school tower and after falling through the skylight in Dr. Crabblesnitch's office, Jimmy is finally reinstated back into Bullworth and everything is well again. Greeted back into the school by Zoe and being cheered on by all of his friends, the game ends, with the title credits rolling. Now, somewhere I read that Jimmy actually died here after crashing through the skylight, and quite honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, as the chapter after this is called Endless Summer, and you're free to do anything you want with everyone liking you, which is kind of weird, isn't it? Anyways, a very weird story with an insane amount of abstract and crazy characters that Rockstar just doesn't include anymore in their games. With that said, I can't really move on without saying that Jimmy Hopkins, despite all of his flaws and the tiny brain he has, is an absolutely great character. Jimmy is well written, and throughout the game he shows his heart of gold in a large number of instances, protecting Pete from the jocks, saving Algie on multiple occasions, even being nice to Gary, which, let's be real, was his biggest mistake. Fuck Gary. Moving on, the gameplay in this game is probably the thing that will make you want to play it over and over again. Featuring good mechanics, a beat-em-up style combat system, good weapon mechanics, and a great traversal system which rewards you for partaking in the different side activities like races, newspaper deliveries, lawn mowing, and even the carnival minigames where if you're patient enough to get 100 tickets, you can get a scooter basically at the start of chapter 2, making your life so much easier. One thing I really hate, and it's probably the thing that I really do not like about this game, is the fact that you can't get the Go-Kart early in the game, as basically you have to wait until chapter 5 for the last part of the map to open up to even start the final city race. And honestly, that sucks, as the Go-Kart is an absolute blast to drive around. Unfortunately, on this playthrough I didn't have the chance to finish the street races, as I'm an extremely busy person outside of YouTube, but just know that if you do plan on doing the races, the Go-Kart is locked until chapter 5, but is absolutely worth getting. Anyways, the gameplay loop is very repetitive, but it's a fun repetitiveness. There's just something about the game and the fact that you can stuff people in lockers, give them wedgies, slap a kick me sign on their backs, and even beat up prefects, which I of course have never done myself, as I was an excellent pupil. The game is magical, with the changing of the seasons, the dynamic weather, the relatively okay graphics for today's standards, and even though they might look dated to folks who grew up with GTA 5, Red Dead 2, or honestly anything that came out in 2019 onward, it still is a great looking game. The art style keeps everything well glued together, and there might be some visual bugs from time to time. The game might crash on PC for you as well, but there's no denying that it's an absolute blast to play. And if you're like me, someone who grew up playing this game, then you know what I mean when I say that this game changed how I viewed myself, how I viewed my potential high school experience. It's a game that gave me an insight on the dangers of bullying, teach me how to actually stand up for myself when my parents weren't really able to. And for that, I feel like I might have a bias towards this game. But upon seeing the reviews and the way certain folks describe their experiences, I can't help but feel that this game did a lot of good to a large number of people. And it really did help me out a lot in ways that I can't even describe. It's a comfort game for me, and every time I feel like there's some kind of a burden on me, this game is there to soften the experience. It's a game that makes you feel things, a game where your actions do have consequences, and with NPCs being specific, each having a unique name, not being just like some randomly generated no-name shooting target like in the GTA games, it feels like an actual real-life town where you are 15 again, living life through the eyes of Jimmy Hopkins. And by the way, a big shout out to Jerry Rosenthal, the voice behind Jimmy Hopkins, and honestly, I can't say thank you enough, sir. Like, your voice absolutely made my childhood, and I still hold it close to my heart. Of course, I can't leave out the rest of the cast, and I want to say thank you to all of them as well, as almost 20 years later, this game still has that same magic it had when I first played it back in 2007 with my friends. Now, it would be a crime to not talk about the amazing music and soundtrack that was done specifically for this game. Man, this game just absolutely rocked. The ambient music playing when you're just roaming around, giving you this kind of nice tune that you can vibe to the chase music when getting chased by prefects or rival factions. Even the mission music and class music are absolutely sick. It was an absolute blast just riding the skateboard and roaming the town with one of Rockstar's most iconic tunes playing in the background, only to hit an adult NPC on accident and get chased by the cops with that wild chase music playing. And even though Rockstar released many other titles that ended up being even better and even more iconic, getting a lot more sales and even getting better reviews while being less controversial, this game just has a heart of gold, and that heart might be stuck underneath layers of controversy and general lack of care for the bully IP by Rockstar, but true fans will always remember this controversial masterpiece, as it laid the foundation for a large number of games that came after it. I mean, hell, Red Dead took the greed and antagonize system straight from this game. And despite some flaws and some optimization issues for PC with random crashes, this game still plays well, and no matter what you might think, it's an amazing experience. With its weird, quirky, abstract characters, the absolutely cringe story, the fun gameplay loop that can keep you engaged for a long time, and of course the music we mentioned previously. This game had it all. It was basically GTA, but in a school setting. Except you had more freedom to act however you wanted. Want to be a full-on ass? Well, here you go. Go mow the lawn as a punishment instead of detention. Or even better, go shovel snow during the winter season if you get caught by the prefects. It was punishing you in a clever way, giving you an engaging punishment, where in GTA or Red Dead, you really didn't feel the consequences of your action. With this said, I can't finish the video without saying that if you haven't played this game, or at least haven't played it in a while, you should. Go grab a cheap copy for your PlayStation, make yourself some hot cocoa, grab a beer, whatever, and just enjoy this controversial masterpiece. Thank you for watching and for staying this long. Like, it's really much appreciated. I really appreciate all of your support. I also want to thank all 170 of my subscribers. I can't even believe we're almost at 200. It just seems so unreal to me. Thank you all so much, and me saying this feels like it will end up in a YouTube video of this channel's progress from 1 to 10 million one day. And honestly, when that happens, I'll be handing out a gaming PC every single month to you folks. So subscribe now for a chance to get an NVIDIA RTX 7090. Anyways, thank you so much, and thank you once again for watching this long. Stay silly, and I'll see you in the next one.